But I feel all the stuff. I don't care what you feel. Don't tell me your feelings. Don't express your feelings. Just sit quietly. Give me your mind. Just let me season it. There is the story. It's about the chicken. The chicken is swimming in this pot of water, and the cook turned the stove on. The chicken comes up and says, "You know, the water is getting really hot. I'm not feeling too hot right now, too good right now. Can you maybe lower the temperature? Plus, why the hell is the stove on?" And the cook looks at the chicken and says, "Look at you. You look bad. You smell bad. Most likely you taste bad. If you let me, I'll make you look good and taste good and smell good." The chicken, very arrogant. And he's very upset by what the cook has said. Goes to the bottom of the pot and says, "How dare the cook telling me I look bad and I taste bad? I'm a chicken, I look great." But then he has a moment where there is this opening where he says, what if the cook is right? What if I really smell bad? What if I look bad and taste bad? And in this moment of grace, I suppose, he comes up to the cook and says, "So, if I say yes to everything you've said, that I look bad and smell bad and taste bad, what are you going to do?" And the cook says, "Well, I'm going to cut up some onions and tomatoes and potatoes and this and that, put some salt and pepper and turmeric. I'm going to turn up the stove, turn up the heat. And then I'm going to cover the pot. And after like 5 hours, you look good. You'll smell good and you'll taste good." And the chicken goes to the bottom of the pot and thinks, "I've been this way for the past 20 years. I haven't gotten anywhere being the way I've been. Maybe I should give myself to the cook." And the chicken does. 5 hours later, the chicken looks at himself or herself and says, "Man, I really look good, smell good, and taste good." And that's the thing, that all of us in this class are very much like chickens. And we imagine ourselves to look good. Sometimes when I go to Costco or when you go to Safeway and you look around and people just look unattractive. And you look at your companion and you think to yourself, do I look as bad as those other people? And the answer is yes. You look far worse. Now, philo is this. I'm no longer interested in you just coming to class. I want to make sure that you're paying attention. And I want to make sure that your attention is not being corrupted by the things you think about or you've been thinking about for the past 20 years and feeling about. You will try to understand the things we'll talk about. And in your attempt to understand, you will corrupt what we've been talking about. So I have to make sure you don't think about those things. Now, what's going to happen is little by little, as I occupy more space inside you, there is less of you inside you and more of me inside you. You're going to be angry, you're going to be confused, very much like the past 50, 60,000 years of us being here. You will try to attempt to have power over your life, your thoughts, your emotions, but no, they are mine. You can't have power over them. And it's going to create another desert for you. You have to live with confusion, with anger. You will try to ask questions from your friends, from your parents, but they're not going to be of much help. And then you're going to feel something really, really strange about yourself. You're going to say, for the past 20 years, I give 25% of me to another, and I'll keep the 75% of me to myself. Just in case the relationship doesn't work, I won't be completely broken. In this scenario, you know what you experience now. You have given me 80% of yourself, and you only have 20% of you to you. That's scary. I have so much power over you. I don't care for your physical body. I don't care for the way you think. I don't care for your history. I don't care about anything about you. The only thing now I care about is how much of me is there inside you. And that's scary for you. You've never been in this position. Now you don't have any power. Most often what usually happens is people simply leave. They try to reclaim who they've always been. Sort of infants with their childish thinkings and emotions. Now, if you're able to stay in the philo stage for about 5, 10, 15, 20 years, if you're lucky, and I'm not sure how this happens, you get to the third and final stage. It's called agape. It's usually referred to as this, I don't know, you merging with God, but all of us in this class are allergic to religion and God and those things. So let's remove God. And let's replace the word God with this. You really, really begin to understand. How do you understand? Here, you only gave me your body. Here, you were able to give me your mind, for me to season your mind and also your soul. Here, agape, you no longer need me. You no longer need to come to class. You no longer need to keep in touch with me. You know the saying, the kingdom of God lives inside you? The understanding or the happiness or the liberation from misery that you've always desired, always wanted, always pursued, it now lives inside you. Now you can observe things for yourself. But now you begin to have this understanding based on observation because of the tools you have received from coming to class, coming to the office, coming to the house, and our interaction. You get to see things through my eyes. But now you improvise. You're a woman, you're an American, you're an American woman in the 21st century from a very, very specific history, but you won't allow those things to contaminate you. Your powers of observation stands on the top. You're able to look down, process everything. It's what we call عشق در دریای غم غمناک نیست. You know, for someone who is sad, who is depressed, it could lead them to paralysis. They'll probably just shut the curtains, they won't leave the house, they won't talk to anyone. They'll probably get chronically depressed. They'll either end their life, go on medication, do lots of drugs. If on the other hand, you're like Khalil Gibran, what you do, you take your sorrow, your grief, you lock yourself in your room, you grab a pen and a notepad, and you begin to write poetry. If you know how to write poetry, then grief can be a source of creativity. If you don't have that tool, it can lead you to despair. Who? What about Nietzsche? Well, when you talk about people like Nietzsche or Sartre or Jesus Christ or Jordan Peterson or Malcolm X, all these people, their ambitions are very different than ours. Their desires are different than ours. You know, the way they define power and happiness, that's very different from ours. So for someone like Nietzsche, he's more than happy to lock himself in his room and just write for 5, 6, 10 hours. He has the tools. He also has a very fertile imagination. I'm sorry? Yeah. You know, if on the other hand, you're talking about someone like me, if I'm overcome with sadness, I don't know how to write, and I don't know how to think, and I don't know how to process my emotions well. I just become a Mike Tyson. I become angry, and I just go around beating up people. You know, so sadness is good for some people, really bad for others. And people like Nietzsche are very, very rare. And I think it'll be a mistake for you to go read Nietzsche and say, I want to be like him. Don't do that. Yeah.
I have read a little bit.
Yeah.
Not really deep. It's like you would always have.
No. No. You don't do philosophy if you're happy. Yeah. Nobody does philosophy if they're happy, unless you want to understand why you're happy. And so you do philosophy. Why am I happy? So you begin to question your own happiness, and that will probably lead you to misery. Anyone else before we continue with? All right. So,
Put up there, like the key word I can find up there is trust. Because how you gonna have a guru, you don't trust a guru, or if you can't trust a guru, as we've seen over the years, that some gurus will lead you astray. So I guess you gotta keep what you want and what your guru wants on the same line. And once you see it splitting, it's that tells you everything you need to know. Everybody's life is not for everybody else.
that's very, very true. I don't really know how the student-teacher or guru-disciple relationship works. You know, one of the things that you have in Genesis, especially the story of Abraham, Isaac, if you're a Jew, Christian, Ishmael, if you're a Muslim, is that Abraham has a teacher, and it's Yahweh. And there comes a point where Yahweh looks at Abraham and says, I know you like me, I know you even love me, I know you're very devoted to me, but I want to test it. I want to know if you prefer things of the world or you only prefer things divine. So to prove yourself to me, you need to sacrifice your son. Okay? And one of the things I need to understand is teachers always test the student, always. And you have no idea if the teacher you have is going to lead you astray, as you suggested, or they're going to take you to wherever it is that you want to go, i.e. happiness. It's, you walk in the dark, you just don't know, you know. And I can't give you, for example, components of what makes a good teacher or what makes a good student. It's really, it's unknown. It has very many unknown elements. All I know is that what history has revealed is the following. Muhammad tried to look for a few followers. He couldn't. After his death, Islam goes into 500 different branches. Not 500, about 72 or so. Jesus dies, and nobody knows what to do with all the teachings, and it becomes contaminated. Lao Tzu dies, and Taoism simply becomes an organization. Malcolm X dies, and the only thing that remains is just his name. All these people who have touched or been touched by something, and they want to give that to someone else, it's been a complete failure. No one is able to. You know, I think one of the best lines I've ever heard of a teacher upon passing is a man named G.I. Gurdjieff. For those of you who know who he is, an Armenian philosopher. When he's about to die, he looks at the students and he says, I have left you all this mess. Do with it what you want. You know, how can you give your wisdom to your kid? You say, I bought this house, it's yours, but you need to understand, I worked about 60 hours a week. I saved a lot of money. I refrained from drinking, from smoking, from partying. I just saved penny after penny after penny to be able to amass like 70,000 down payment. The house is paid off, it's all yours. How will you give all that effort and sacrifice you've made to your daughter? They will never understand it. It's impossible. They have the house. They just don't know the sweat and the blood that went into buying the house. There is nothing wrong with you following Jesus. It's just You never really left your parents at the age of 12. You really never suffered from confusion the way he did. You didn't disappear for 18 years, traveling because you wanted to understand the meaning of life and who and what you are. You didn't have that inside you. He did. He comes back and he's your Costco now. And you're a consumer. What do? I'll give you my time. Okay. And I'll give you my body. Okay. And once in a while, if I can, I'll give you my mind so you can kind of just tell me what to think. That's all you can do. You will never leave your parents. You will never leave your biases. You will never leave your community. You will never leave the comforts of your life. And so you will always remain a dimwit. But you can call yourself a Christian. There's nothing wrong with it.
So the age factor, does it come into play a lot? Because me being a 60-year-old, I've been through a lot of that. I can just about pinpoint where I'm at. Having people younger in the class, 20, who haven't even started, or maybe they're somewhere along that road. Is that
No.
Does it make it easier to understand? Because I can understand that, look back in my life and say, yeah, well, something kind of close like that happened. Something's kind of, I can look back on my memories and say, yeah, okay, I can see that. I can see that being true. Whereas other people that haven't had those memories yet are looking up and saying,
So here's the way I think things work. If you're able to kind of go back to the story of the three piglets and the wolf. So what you have is the first tiny little pig who says, I'm going to build myself a tiny little straw hut. So when the wolf comes, I can just hide in it and not be eaten by it. So the two brothers sit back and watch. And the wolf comes and blows everything to pieces. And what they learn is that the wolf is far too powerful. A house made of straws, it's not going to do much. So what they do is they learn from the mistake of the first pig. And the second one goes to Home Depot and buys lumber and makes a second house by 2x4s. Nail guns, all that stuff. The first pig realizes that he doesn't really have the knowledge to make a 2x4 house, just goes and lives with the second pig. But the wolf is far too strong. So the second house also falls apart. The third pig sits back and observes what happened to the straw hut, observes what has happened to the house made by 2x4s and says no. I mean, if you live in certain parts of Texas where it's really, really hot, you don't make fences out of wood. They won't last more than 2 years. You make fences out of cinder blocks, rebars, concrete and mortar. They can withstand the temperature. Okay? So what the third pig does is he goes to Home Depot, gets rebars, concrete, mortar, and cinder blocks and builds a house. And the wolf comes and tries to destroy it and won't get destroyed. It's not just age, it's your ability to, at a certain point, you have to stand outside of your experiences, outside of them. Okay? And so you can be able to look at the experiences. And when you begin to look at the experiences, you will have emotions that you haven't had in the past. You have anger, and you were doing really well with anger. You would drink it away, or smoke it away, or pour it away, however way you were dealing with anger. You were able to do that. But now, you're no longer consumed by anger, drunk by anger. Now you stand outside and say, I am feeling angry. What should I do with it? You realize that, well, in order to do anything with this anger, you have to overcome 20 or 30 years of addiction, of allowing yourself to be pushed and pulled by anger. You want to be in charge of anger, not anger in charge of you. And this is a new territory for you. You don't know what to do. Okay? So you will try to kind of have power over anger, but you will fail. Because to have power over anything in life, you need resources. You're a novice. You may be a 60-year-old man, but this territory you find yourself in, observing the anger, that's new for you. And you're going to fail, and you're going to fall, and you're going to get bruised up. But if you keep at it for a while, and you need a teacher for this, you can't do this on your own. Doing it on your own, you can be successful. It'll just take you 20 years. If you can work with someone, it'll take you maybe 5 years. Okay? And the problem with the 5 year is that if you have a teacher, you have no choice but to abuse the teacher. Why? Kind of the way you and I abuse our parents. They keep telling us their wisdom, their experiences. We say no because we think we know better. Okay? And eventually, what happens to them? Frustration, day after day after day after day. And eventually, your father just has a stroke and dies, all because of you. And then time passes, you realize, yep, your father was right. Okay? So teachers have no choice but to be abused and harassed by students because students lack understanding. Students don't have the capacity to receive and apply. So the teacher has to wait and wait and wait and wait. And for those of us in this class who have children, you know how this goes. You know, you have no choice but to be harassed and abused by your kids on a daily basis. You know, and any parent is extremely lucky, okay, to live long enough to see their kids graduating from school, not landing behind bars, getting a companion who is relatively decent, you know, that they've turned out to be a relatively decent human being. Most parents are no longer that fortunate. And maybe it's a good thing that people are getting married late and having kids late in life, because they don't get a chance, lucky for them, to see their kids being losers from the age like 15 all the way to 40. They're long dead. You know, it's not like before, where you get married at the age of 15, you know, by the time you're like 25, you have 8 kids, you know, and then you have to kind of suffer seeing them all going to San Quentin or start smoking weed or whatever. So what happens is you begin to stand outside of yourself, observing all these experiences, and then you begin to have lots of feelings. Then we are expressive animals. You want to tell other people how you feel. And the only way you do it, I'm not too fond of music. I'm not too fond of, I mean, they're great forms of expression, but human beings ultimately are in the business of wanting to understand what the hell is going on with me. I want to understand. Music will give you a moment of peace, calmness, respite, Garden of Eden, I suppose. But it'll soon be kind of swallowed by this darkness of ignorance. Okay? So you really want to understand why you feel a certain way, why your life has turned out this way. So what you'll do after having observed your emotions, your life, you have a good amount of anger. It's a healthy anger. It's like baptizing you. But now you want to express, share with other people how you feel. But now you begin to realize that, yes, you know English, you've spoken the language for 60 years, but you don't know how to express these emotions in a language that's coherent, that's refined, that's seasoned, that's enlightened. So you keep fumbling. And that's another stage. And what happens is, if you're able to resist the temptation of walking away, and you're going to read a lot of books that will help you enhance your vocabulary, put the emotions to the right words where you can feel comfortable. And there comes a point where before even speaking of it, what you do is you begin to just imagine, you begin to think about the emotions on your own. Once in a while, and it's a thing about this culture, you have a journal now, you begin to write your emotions down. But it's all jumbled up. You know, you go all over the place. But if, for example, I, a 20-year-old, was to come to you and say, so tell me what it means to be African American in America. Man, you better be a good cook. You know, it's like me asking you, how do you make rice? Give me the step-by-step process. Because what will happen is my question, if you're able to answer my question well, I get to see my life inside your words. If I don't see myself inside the things you're talking about, you lose me. If you come to me and say, Amir, how do you make Persian rice? Or how do you make rice that's delicious? I'll tell you step by step. And what will happen is you say, let me take notes. You say, okay, boil water, 3 cups. Put the rice in there when it's boiling with some salt and some oil so that the rice don't stick together. Let it boil for about 5 minutes. Drain it. Okay. Put a little bit of oil at the bottom of the pot. Cut some potatoes, about 1/4 inch thick. Lay them at the bottom. Put the rice. Add some butter. Add some water. Close the lid. Let it sit about 45 minutes. Medium. Oh man, this rice will come out. It's delicious. You can actually take notes and go home and apply, and it'll turn out beautiful. After a few tries, of course. If on the other hand, I just tell you, yeah, you just go to Costco, you buy like 10 pounds of rice for about like $20. You go home and get some water, put the rice in the water, and then you eat it. What the hell is that? Now, for you to know the recipe, it means that you began as as someone who was curious. Then you became really interested in making rice. Then it's something you did every single day for about 2-3 hours until you became really, really, really good. And now you can teach it to other people. If I was to go back to, again, another of my favorite thinkers, G.I. Gurdjieff, he had once mentioned, I don't know how true it is, that one of the reasons it's difficult to talk to people about anything is that they're not good at anything. Nobody is good at anything. Everybody's just mediocre. Because to be good at anything requires sacrifice, focus, and effort. And if you're not good at anything, if you're just mediocre, it means that you spend about 20 minutes of your day, dibble-dabbing in this, dibble-dabbing in that. You'll never be good at anything. So age is not enough. You need to process the emotions and the thoughts. Then you need to understand that process. Then you need to write the process down. Then you need to talk about the process. Once you talk to other people about your understanding, very much like Lao Tzu, you'd want to leave China. Very much like Rumi, you realize it's been a complete waste of time. You realize it's best to maybe lock yourself in a room and just write a good book. Like Gilgamesh, you grow tired of finding ears that pretend to be hearing but not listening or hearing or understanding, and eventually you resort to writing your story on a wall. Yeah.
So, it's like a vessel, age, like, you have a whole lot of like life experience.
It's a great question. So what happens if you're young and you lack experience, you have all these profound ideas, but these ideas have not been tested by life. So as a young people, for example, as a young person, you read lots of books about healthy relationships. So you have all these fancy, fantastic ideas in your head. And you're like 25, 30, and you say, okay, now I'm like a guru of relationships, right? You go out, you find yourself in a relationship, and you suck at it. And you say, well, all the things I have read, all the things I know, and what you usually do is you make your companion feel bad because you're great. You've read like thousands of books. You've thought ideas, you know what these ideas are all about. It's your companion who's no good. And it's going to take you some time to realize that it's actually you who suck, okay? So what you have is a young person with a lot of fantastic ideas, but simply lacks proper understanding because they lack the proper life experience. What you have in older people, someone say like you, is that you're no longer 20, you have a great amount of life experiences. The problem with all these experiences is that they're like a chunk of meat stuck to your down here, right? You're on a daily basis suffocating. You're wanting someone to give you like a Coke or something to push it down so you can breathe. So you begin to read, you begin to ask for help. The problem now is you have a lot of experience, i.e., baggage. Okay? So what you have with the young people is they are empty with zero experience. They are ready to learn, but it's going to take them a long time to understand. With someone who has a lot of experience, you have to break through the experience. But if you're able to break through the experience, oh man, like what he said, I see my life in the charting, on the map, on the board. The nice thing about experience is that if someone is able to break through, you'll be able to understand things. See yourself on the board very, very clearly. Now, it doesn't mean you will know what to do with the things you see. It just means that for the first time, you're able to see things a bit more clearly. Okay? That can cause a good amount of stress as well as clarity. The stress, of course, will be more because now you see things. And the more you see, the more you have to carry. Your burden becomes heavier and heavier and heavier. And then you kind of go back to that ancient prayer. Ignorance is a bliss. It's not spoken by someone who is stupid or ignorant. It's spoken by someone who truly has seen a few things and they don't want to carry this anymore. And they say, man, it would have been nice if I just didn't know. The problem with older people is that it takes really a great amount of work to break through all that stuff. And then once you break through, they're going to give you a good amount of their anger, their emotions, their unprocessed, unrefined emotions and thoughts. And then you have to sit them down, of course, sit back and kind of just go through all of them. You know, the quickest way, of course, is what we call eros. You know, when you go to a therapist, for example, you're missing a very important component, which is love. If you don't love your therapist, just sit there and listen for a while. If, on the other hand, you love your therapist, and it can happen in the course of like a 6-month period or a year period or instantaneous. You go there, you see him or her, and there is something magical about the person, and you feel this instantaneous connection, okay, where you open up and say things. That love creates a good amount of physical submission. And because of the love and because of the power factor, you also begin to have this fear. I don't want to say anything, do anything that will piss off my therapist or the person I've fallen in love with. And that fear forces your mouth to be kept shut. You know, whether or not it leads to understanding, that's a different story. But whether you're young with no experience or old with a lot of experience, they both require a great amount of effort to get both of these people to a place of understanding. So it's good to see all of you. It's raining, I think, yes? Huh?
Stop this for you.
Have a good day, people. Thank you.